Ben was sitting at his laptop scrolling through specialized medical furniture stores. "I think I found one," he said almost to himself. "An adult-sized special needs bed. It's kind of like a crib but sturdy enough for her." Joe glanced over. "Victoria's bigger now, are you sure it'll fit her?" Ben nodded, typing rapidly. "Exactly why I ordered it now, she needs it and it'll make things safer for her." Joe leaned back, looking around Victoria's newly organized room. Boxes of her medical supplies were neatly stacked, shelves labeled, and every bottle and device had its own spot. "Good timing," he said. "Her room just got organized, we've got the space ready." Ben smiled. "Maya said Victoria will be home around 4:30 from her trip, perfect timing." When Victoria returned, she was in her power chair, the sun glinting off the polished floor as Joe carefully guided her inside. "Hey Vic," Joe said gently, steering the chair toward her room. "We've got a little surprise waiting for you." Victoria's eyes lit up with curiosity, though she didn't suspect exactly what was coming. "Oh, what kind of surprise?" she asked, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. Ben wheeled in behind them, holding the neatly wrapped package with the bed's instruction manual on top. "Something comfy just for you," he said. "We thought it'd help you rest easier." Victoria blinked, a mix of excitement and apprehension crossing her face. "Really, for me?" Joe smiled. "Yes, Victoria, and we'll make it feel just like, well, something familiar and safe." As the afternoon sun streamed through the window, they began to set up the adult-sized crib-style bed. Ben tightened the screws while Joe positioned Victoria's chair near the bed so she could watch. She hummed softly, sensing the care and attention going into every step. Once the bed was ready, Victoria's eyes widened. It was bigger than she expected, soft and safe, with gentle rails that made it feel secure but not confining. Ben knelt beside her. "Want to try it out?" he asked. Victoria nodded shyly. "Okay." Joe helped her transfer slowly from her power chair onto the bed. She sank into the soft mattress with a sigh of relief. It felt snug, secure, and strangely comforting, just the way she needed it. Ben handed her a soft blanket and a pacifier. "Just relax, Victoria, this is all about you feeling safe and comfortable." Victoria tucked herself in, smiling up at them. "Thanks, I like it." Joe ruffled her hair gently. "Good, we'll make sure you always have a safe place like this." Ben watched, satisfied. Mission accomplished. The room felt warmer, calmer, a perfect little haven for Victoria. Outside, the world kept spinning, but inside it was just her, Joe, and Ben, her own little safe space. Ben glanced at Joe holding a small basket of Victoria's bath supplies. "Joe, I'm going to get her bath set up. She knows the routine by now," he said calmly, moving toward the bathroom. Joe nodded, glancing at Victoria, who was now snug in her new bed. "All right, and don't forget her medical vibrator," Ben added, referring to the device Victoria used for comfort and therapy. "In Japeness," Joe replied quietly. "Chucks, we have. Let's do this quick, we have to go on our date." Ben smirked lightly. "Don't worry, the babysitter is on his way anyway, so Victoria will be taken care of while we're gone." Victoria watched from her bed, hands gripping the soft blanket, a small smile forming on her lips. She had settled in, familiar with the rhythm of their care. Even the little devices and routines didn't feel strange anymore, they felt safe, like part of her world. Ben opened the bathroom door and motioned for Victoria to come closer. "Ready for your bath, sweetheart?" he asked softly. Victoria nodded, the excitement of the new bed and the comforting routine of her bath mixing together. "Yes," she murmured, her voice small but eager. Joe leaned down to her level. "We'll be back soon, you'll be safe, Victoria," he said reassuringly. Ben guided her gently into the warm water, letting her feel the soothing temperature against her skin. He moved efficiently, knowing Victoria's routine well, washing her hair first, then her body, using just the right soft sponges and gentle motions. As Victoria relaxed, Joe smiled at the efficiency and care Ben always showed. "She's lucky to have you," he whispered. Ben chuckled softly, "and she knows it." The bathroom was filled with the gentle sounds of running water and Victoria's small sighs of comfort. Outside, life continued as usual, but inside this small room, everything revolved around her safety, comfort, and happiness, a perfect little world curated by Ben and Joe. A soft knock echoed through the hallway. Ben set down the towel he had been holding and went to the door. "Jake," he greeted, pulling the door open. "Victoria is in her room with Joe. Her feeding supplies are in the fridge if you need anything." Jake stepped inside, a hint of hesitation on his face. "Ben, why did you hire a man to babysit your daughter?" he asked cautiously. Ben's expression softened, understanding the concern immediately. "She's trans," he said gently. "That's why I wanted someone who could relate and provide care in a way that's comfortable for her." Jake nodded slowly, a flush of understanding crossing his face. "Got it, I am too, sorry if that came out wrong." Ben smiled, shaking his head. "You have a right to ask that question. I know some people might feel uncomfortable, but Victoria, she's okay. She had a mental age of about 3 sometimes, like a kid, but she's fine. We just make sure she's safe and comfortable." Jake glanced toward Victoria's room, seeing her relaxed and secure with Joe by her side. "Thanks for explaining, I wanted to understand," he said. Ben nodded. "I appreciate that. It's a lot for people to grasp, but for us it's about making sure she's happy and cared for. That's all that matters." Jake offered a small smile. "Yeah, I see that now. She looks really comfortable." Ben stepped aside, motioning for Jake to come in. "Come in, she'd probably like to see a friendly face." As Jake followed him down the hallway, Victoria peeked out from her bed, her eyes lighting up at the sight of someone new entering the room, safe and gentle in her familiar little world. Ben glanced at Jake, handing him the small basket of Victoria's medical supplies. "You can handle Victoria's medical stuff, right?" Jake nodded confidently. "Yeah, I've got this." Joe crouched down to Victoria's level. "Vic, Jake is in charge tonight. Your bedtime stays the same, 8 o'clock. Once he gets you changed and gives your medicine, that's it. No tantrums, okay?" Victoria blinked, a little uncertain but trusting Joe and Ben. "Okay," she murmured softly. Jake smiled warmly at her. "Don't worry, Victoria, I'll take good care of you. You just relax, all right?" Joe stood, brushing a hand over Victoria's hair. "You guys enjoy your night out," he said to Ben and Jake. "We'll leave you in good hands." Ben chuckled lightly. "Yep, I trust you. Make sure she's comfortable, okay?" Jake nodded, giving a reassuring glance to Victoria. "I got you, Vic. We'll have a nice, calm evening. Everything's under control." Victoria tucked herself into the soft blankets of her new bed, watching Jake move confidently around the room, setting up her feeding supplies and making sure her medical devices were ready. For the first time that evening, she felt completely relaxed, knowing that even while Joe and Ben were away, she was safe, cared for, and her little world was exactly how it should be. Jake glanced at Victoria, who was settling into her new bed with a soft blanket tucked around her. He crouched slightly to meet her eye level. "Your daddy, Ben, told me you're not allowed to watch TV right now," he said gently. "So instead, I'll give you some of your toys while I watch some on TV myself." Victoria's eyes lit up at the mention of toys. "Okay," she murmured, a small smile forming. She clutched her favorite plushie, grateful for the distraction. Jake set up a few small toys on the bed within her reach, a rattle, a soft tether, and a little stacking toy, and handed them to her one by one. "Here you go, just play with these while I keep an eye on you," he said softly. As Victoria began to play, Jake muttered quietly to himself in Japanese, the words barely audible. "They better pay me well for this shit." Victoria glanced up at him curiously. "What did you say?" Jake quickly forced a smile, shaking his head. "Oh, nothing, Vic, just talking to myself. You keep playing, okay?" Victoria nodded, returning her attention to her toys, feeling comforted by his presence despite his grumbling. She understood that tonight's routine might be a little different, but as long as Jake was there, she felt safe and cared for. Jake leaned back in the chair by the bed, keeping a watchful eye on her as she played. Inside, he silently reminded himself to be professional, even if the job was a little more unusual than he expected. The room hummed with quiet, the soft sounds of Victoria's play mixing with the faint background of the television. For tonight, everything felt calm, controlled, and safe. Ben grabbed his jacket and checked his wallet. "Joe, what do you want to eat tonight?" Joe didn't hesitate. "A burger, a real one, not that fancy stuff." Ben smiled. Burger it is. He glanced down at his phone and added, I transferred 18,540.97 yen to Jake already. Joe raised an eyebrow. You tell Jake no TV for Victoria. Ben nodded. Yeah, I was clear about it. Good, Joe said, locking the door behind them. She'll push boundaries if she thinks she can. Ben sighed, but there was relief in his voice. Jake knows the rules: bedtime at 8, meds, change, toys only, simple night. Joe paused before they headed to the car. You trust him? Ben nodded again. I do, and he asked the right questions. That matters. Inside the house, Victoria's room stayed quiet. Jake glanced in from the hallway, seeing her absorbed in her toys, calm and settled. He checked the clock, plenty of time before bedtime. All right, kiddo, he said softly, we're doing just fine. Outside, Ben started the car and pulled away. One burger, one quiet date, he said. Joe leaned back in his seat, and one peaceful night for Victoria. For once, everything felt lined up just right. Jake stepped into the kitchen and checked the fridge again, then called Ben. Hey Ben, where's Victoria's medicine? I only see the formula, Jake said, keeping his voice low. Ben answered calmly, it's already mixed into the formula, you don't give it separately. Oh okay, Jake replied, relieved, got it. He paused, then added, I got the money you sent, thank you. No problem, Ben said, thanks for covering tonight. Jake glanced down the hallway toward Victoria's room. She keeps saying plug in, plug in. Ben sighed softly, already knowing, that's nothing, she just wants to stay up later, she does that sometimes. So I don't need to do anything, Jake asked. No, Ben said firmly but relaxed. Don't worry, she's good, stick to the routine. All right, Jake replied, I've got it. After the call ended, Jake went back into Victoria's room. She was sitting up in bed, holding her plushie, looking toward the wall where her feeding pump usually sat. It's okay, Victoria, Jake said gently. Everything's already plugged in and working, you're all set. She frowned for a moment, then relaxed, hugging her toy closer. Jake checked the clock, still on schedule. He adjusted her blanket, made sure her formula was flowing properly, and dimmed the lights just a little. Almost bedtime, he said calmly. You're doing really good. Victoria yawned, the routine settling her the way it always did. The house stayed quiet. Everything was exactly how Ben and Joe wanted it, safe, predictable, and calm. Jake finished changing Victoria carefully, making sure everything was clean, dry, and comfortable. He disposed of the supplies properly and washed his hands before returning to her bedside. All right, Victoria, he said in a steady, reassuring voice. Your daddies are on their way home. Victoria looked up at him, calmer now, clutching her plush toy. Jake checked her setup one more time. I'm connecting the feeding tube to your G button now, he explained clearly, following the routine Ben had shown him. He double-checked the line, then turned on the feeding machine, watching the screen to make sure it was running correctly. There we go, he said softly. Everything's working just like it should. Victoria shifted slightly, then relaxed once the familiar hum of the machine filled the room. Jake adjusted her blanket and lowered the lights. You did good tonight, he told her, just rest now. He glanced at the clock, right on schedule. A few minutes later, headlights swept across the front window as Ben and Joe pulled into the driveway. Jake exhaled, relieved everything had gone smoothly. She's settled, he murmured to himself, giving Victoria one last check before heading toward the door. Inside the room, Victoria lay quietly, safe, comfortable, and waiting, everything just the way her daddies liked it. The front door opened quietly as Ben and Joe stepped inside, setting their keys down. Jake, Ben asked softly, how was she? Jake stood up from the couch and answered calmly, other than what I already told you and her asking to watch TV, she was fine. Joe nodded, no problems with her routine. No, Jake said, she was changed, fed, and settled. Feeding machines on, tube and G-button are connected properly, she's resting. Ben let out a relieved breath, goods, thank you. Jake gave a small smile, she did great tonight. Joe glanced down the hallway toward Victoria's room. All right, we'll take it from here. Jake grabbed his jacket, I'll head out then. Ben nodded appreciatively, drive safe and thanks again. As Jake stepped out, Ben and Joe moved quietly toward Victoria's room, the house calm and back in its familiar rhythm. They stepped quietly into Victoria's room. The soft hum of the feeding machine filled the air and she lay settled in her bed, hugging her plush close. Ben watched her for a moment before speaking softly. "She had an okay time," he said, then his voice lowered. "I still don't believe her biological family isn't looking for her." Joe stayed near the door, keeping his voice just as low. "Low-key, I think they are looking for Vin, they just won't be looking for him because now everyone sees her as a she." Ben nodded slowly. "Exactly, that's why she can't watch anything without one of us around." Joe glanced at Victoria, then back at Ben. No screens, no outside noise, nothing that gives away patterns. Ben adjusted the blanket gently around her shoulders. "It's not about control, it's about safety." Victoria stirred slightly, then relaxed again when Ben's hand rested on her arm. "She doesn't need to know all that," Joe said quietly. "No," Ben agreed, "she just needs to feel safe, that's our job." They stood there for a moment longer, watching her breathe evenly, the room calm and secure once again. Joe finally whispered, "We did the right thing tonight." Ben nodded, "We always do for her." Ben's phone buzzed in his hand. He frowned at the screen, then froze. It was a text from Jake. An Amber Alert screenshot. A picture attached, older, shorter hair before transition. Vin. Under it, Jake had written, "Victoria has a twin brother." Ben's throat went dry. He didn't answer, he just turned the phone and showed Joe. Joe stared at the screen for a long moment, his jaw tightened. "Happy fucking birthday to me," he muttered under his breath. Ben lowered his voice immediately. "This changes things." Joe nodded, anger and fear mixing. That picture, anyone who knew Vin back then would recognize it. "And Jake seeing this means it's already public," Ben said quietly. "We need to be careful, very careful." Joe glanced toward Victoria's bed. She slept peacefully, unaware, the soft machine hummed steady and calm. "She didn't do anything wrong," Joe said. "None of this is on her." "I know," Ben replied, "but this means we lock things down even tighter. No screens, no visitors we don't trust, and we don't panic." Joe exhaled slowly. "I'll message Jake back, tell him it's complicated and we'll talk later, no details." Ben nodded. "Good, and tomorrow we make calls, quiet ones." They stood there in silence, the weight of the alert hanging in the air, the past knocking louder than either of them wanted. Joe finally said, softer now, "She's safe tonight, that's what matters." Ben looked at Victoria and nodded. "Tonight, yes." Joe lowered his voice even more. "They're going to weigh her too," he said quietly. Ben's face drained of color. "Oh shit, Joe, we're going to jail." Joe grabbed Ben by the shoulders, firm but steady. "Hey, stop." Ben's breathing was shallow. "This is my fault, I shouldn't have." "Listen to me," Joe said, cutting him off. "Running would make it worse, way worse." Ben swallowed hard, eyes glossy. "I'm scared." "I know," Joe said, softer now, "but we don't hide, we document everything, medical records, guardianship papers, doctors, therapists, everything that shows she's safe." Ben nodded slowly, shaking. "I love you so much right now, I'm sorry I pulled you into this." Joe pulled him into a tight hug. "You didn't pull me into anything, I chose this, we did what we thought protected her." They both looked toward Victoria's bed. She slept peacefully, unaware of the storm forming around her. "We pack documents," Joe continued. "Not bags to run, papers, phone numbers, we call a lawyer first thing in the morning." Ben wiped his face. "Okay, okay." Joe squeezed his hand. "One step at a time, tonight she sleeps, tomorrow we face it the right way." The room stayed quiet except for the steady hum of the feeding machine, proof that, for this moment at least, Victoria was safe. Ben spread the paperwork out on the table with shaking hands: medical records, therapy notes, guardianship documents, transition-related healthcare files, and letters from specialists. Joe flipped through them carefully, his expression focused, calm. "Okay," he said quietly, "this is solid, you did more right than you think." Ben swallowed. "Can you fix this?" Joe nodded once, "Not with tricks, with process." He organized the stack into clean folders. Medical necessity, continuous care, legal guardianship, no signs of neglect, no signs of concealment. Ben watched, breath held. "You really think this can go away?" Joe met his eyes. "I think it can be resolved, there's a difference." He pulled out his phone and started making calls, not rushed, not panicked. Calm, professional. First thing in the morning, we notify the proper channels. We don't hide, we cooperate. Ben exhaled slowly, the tension easing just a little. I don't deserve you. Joe gave a faint smile. That's not true, and this, he tapped the paperwork, this protects her, that's what matters. They both glanced toward Victoria's room. She slept peacefully, unaware of the weight lifting just slightly from the air. Joe gathered the folders neatly. Go sit with her, he said, I've got this part. Ben nodded, voice thick, thank you. Joe watched him walk away, then looked back down at the documents. All right, he murmured to himself, let's do this the right way. The lawyer leaned back in his chair, reviewing the paperwork one last time. Technically, he began, a person named Liam Smith gave you guardianship over Sam Smith. That means the other family no longer has legal rights over Victoria since they voluntarily relinquished them when Sam, and by extension Victoria, was placed in the group home. Ben's stomach dropped. Wait, so that makes me technically an illegal guardian over Victoria. The lawyer nodded slowly. Legally speaking, yes, you didn't have formal transfer of guardianship for Victoria herself. You were acting as her caretaker, but without proper documentation for her specifically, it's a gray area. It's not malicious, but it is technically outside the law. Joe, sitting quietly beside Ben, clenched his fists. So all this time we've been doing everything to protect her, but legally we're on thin ice. Exactly, the lawyer said. That's why the paperwork we gathered is so important. We can demonstrate intent, medical necessity, and her well-being. Courts often prioritize the child's safety, but you need to regularize her guardianship immediately. Otherwise, anyone could challenge your authority. Ben ran a hand over his face. So what do we do? The lawyer leaned forward. File for formal guardianship over Victoria specifically. Provide all records, medical documents, and proof she's safe and cared for. The court will see that she's been in a safe environment and is receiving proper care. Once that's approved, you're fully legal. Joe exhaled sharply. All right, that's the plan then. No shortcuts, no running, no panic, just legal steps. Ben nodded, relief mixed with anxiety. I just want her safe. She is safe, the lawyer assured them. And if you follow this process, she'll remain that way, legally and fully protected. Ben looked at Joe, gratitude and worry in his eyes. Thank you for keeping me calm through all this. Joe gave a small, tight smile. We'll get it done together. Ben and Joe sat in the small office, papers organized neatly in folders, ready to file for formal guardianship over Victoria. They had copies of medical records, therapy notes, and proof of her safe living environment. Suddenly, the door burst open. Billy stormed in, his face red with anger. You son of a bitch, where, Vin? Ben stayed calm, taking a deep breath. First of all, he said firmly, you lost custody of Victoria the moment your wife placed her in the group home. Second, he glanced at Joe, then back at Billy. Liam, rest in peace, signed legal guardianship over to me, and her name is Victoria now. Billy froze, shock and fury mixing on his face. Victoria, what are you talking about? Joe stepped forward, voice steady but authoritative. You need to understand, Billy, she is safe, she is cared for, and legally you have no claim over her anymore. Any attempt to interfere will only make things worse for you. Ben added, holding the paperwork tightly, we're here to file her guardianship papers today. Once that's done, she's fully under legal protection, and anyone trying to challenge that without evidence will fail. We're doing everything by the book. Billy's fists clenched, but he slowly realized he was outmatched legally and practically. His face twisted with frustration, but he said nothing more. Joe exhaled, looking at Ben. All right, let's get this filed. The court sees the evidence, sees her safe, and finalizes it, that's it. Ben nodded, shoving the folders into his bag. Today we make it official. No more confusion, no more questions, just legal protection for Victoria. Billy glared at them one last time, then stormed out, leaving Ben and Joe in silence. Ben leaned back, exhaling. That went better than I expected. Joe shook his head, but a small smile appeared. Better, that was tense as hell, but yeah, better, let's finish this. The office was quiet again, the evidence laid out, the next step clear, filing the guardianship and making Victoria's safety legally permanent. Billy slammed the car door shut and started the engine. Max and John were already in the back seat. I saw Ben, Billy said through clenched teeth. He said he has guardianship over her. John looked up. Over who? Billy's jaw tightened. Vin is Victoria now. Max blinked. Huh. John frowned, thinking it through. Dad, wait, you mean he's a she now? Billy didn't answer right away. John continued carefully, that's not illegal. Gender identity isn't about consent like that. Medical and legal guardians make decisions when someone can't, especially if doctors are involved. Billy shot him a look. You sound real sure of that. I am, John said quietly. And Victoria can't consent to a lot of things. That's why guardianship matters. That's why courts decide. Max tugged on John's sleeve. What are you guys talking about? John sighed and turned. Max, play on your iPad, okay? Max shrugged and did as he was told. Billy gripped the steering wheel harder. Don't text your mother yet, he said. Not yet. John's voice lowered. Dad, whatever you're thinking, don't do anything stupid. If Ben really has paperwork, lawyers, doctors. Billy cut him off. I'll figure something else out first. John stared out the window, uneasy. Just remember, he said quietly, charging in angry is how people lose for good. Billy didn't respond. The car drove on in tense silence, Max's tablet sounds filling the space where certainty used to be. Somewhere else paperwork was being filed. And the clock was no longer on Billy's side. Ben tapped the phone, calling Jake. Hey, tomorrow we need you to look after Victoria all day. Joe and I have to be at the courthouse. Jake's voice came through, calm but cautious. Victoria is Vin, right? Ben exhaled, yeah. Jake's tone shifted slightly, thoughtful. The biological family is trying to get custody. Ben nodded, yeah, how'd you know? Jake chuckled softly. When I sent that Amber Alert, you didn't say anything. I put the pieces together. I guess you have your reasons. Ben hesitated. At the courthouse, the judge may want to talk to Victoria. We need everything ready and she needs to be comfortable with the process. Jake paused for a moment. Got it. So I stay home, keep her calm, make sure she eats, takes her medicine, and stays safe. And when you get back, she's ready to meet the judge if needed. Exactly, Ben said. Relief crept into his voice. You've handled her before. I trust you. Just stick to the routine and don't let her stress. Jake responded, all right, I'll be ready. I'll make sure she's calm and safe all day. Ben hung up, turning to Joe. Good, Jake's reliable. Victoria won't even notice we're gone. Joe nodded, giving Ben a reassuring look. And we'll make sure everything goes smoothly at the courthouse. No surprises, we have all the evidence and paperwork ready. Ben glanced back at Victoria, peacefully playing with her toys. She doesn't deserve stress over this. She just needs us to handle it. Joe smiled softly. We will, that's our job. The next morning, Ben and Joe loaded their folders full of paperwork into a briefcase, glancing back once more at Victoria's room. She was happily playing with her toys, the feeding machine humming softly beside her. Jake got this, Ben said quietly. Joe nodded. Routine stays the same. Toys, formula, meds on time, calm environment, she'll be fine. Jake gave a thumbs up from beside Victoria's bed. Don't worry, I've got her all day. Ben and Joe slipped out the door, heading to the courthouse. The drive was tense but quiet. Both of them reviewed their strategy, medical records, therapy notes, letters from doctors and specialists, and the legal documents proving guardianship over Sam and the necessity of extending care to Victoria. At the courthouse, Ben and Joe entered the courtroom, greeted by a clerk who led them to a judge's assistant. Everything appears in order, the assistant said, reviewing the files. The judge will see you shortly. In the waiting room, Ben whispered, everything we've done tonight, all the paperwork, it's all here. She'll see Victoria's best interest is the priority. Joe nodded, no surprises, just facts, safety, care, stability. When they were called in, the judge glanced at the folders, then at Ben and Joe. I understand there is a question of guardianship and the well-being of Victoria Smith. Can you explain the situation? Ben stood clear and calm. Your Honor, Victoria was formerly Vin Smith. Her biological family voluntarily relinquished custody of both children when they were placed in a group home. Liam Smith, now deceased, legally transferred guardianship over Sam Smith to me. We are requesting formal guardianship over Victoria as well to ensure continuity of care. All her medical, therapeutic, and daily needs are being met and documented. She is safe, healthy, and thriving. Joe added, we have all the evidence to show this. She receives proper medical care, attends therapy as recommended, and is in a safe, structured environment. Any disruption could be detrimental to her well-being. The judge nodded, flipping through the records. And Victoria is aware of this process. Does she consent to speak if necessary? Ben and Joe exchanged a glance. She is aware in age-appropriate terms, Ben said. She can meet with you if the court feels it necessary, and we will support her emotionally throughout. The judge smiled gently. Good, I will review the documents thoroughly. If everything is in order, the guardianship can be formalized promptly. The priority here is her safety and continuity of care. Back at home with Jake, Victoria was coloring quietly on the floor, a soft blanket draped over her legs. Jake checked her feeding machine, then handed her a small plush toy. "How's my favorite helper doing?" he asked softly. Victoria looked up and smiled. "I'm good." Jake ruffled her hair. "Good, Daddy and Joe are at a meeting, but they're doing this so you'll stay safe and happy. Nothing to worry about." Victoria nodded, clutching her toy. "Okay." Jake settled into the chair beside her, keeping an eye on the clock. Calm and steady, he made sure her routine stayed uninterrupted, medications on time, formula running smoothly, and quiet playtime keeping her relaxed until Ben and Joe returned. The courtroom was quiet as the judge looked directly at Ben and Joe. "Before you get Victoria on the phone," the judge said, "I need to ask about her bottom surgery. Can you clarify?" Ben cleared his throat, steadying himself. "Your Honor, Victoria was hurt by a former caregiver who is deceased now. During that time, she engaged in self-soothing behaviors, including touching herself and sometimes messing her diapers. We attempted to redirect her appropriately and gently, but she would often return to the behavior." The judge nodded, listening carefully. "So the surgery or medical intervention was for sanitary and health reasons?" Ben took a breath. "Yes, Your Honor, everything was discussed with medical professionals, and the goal has always been Victoria's safety, hygiene, and overall well-being. It was never punitive, always protective." The judge leaned back slightly. "I see, thank you for clarifying. That will help the court understand the context when speaking with her." Joe added softly, "Victoria's care is our priority. Every step we've taken, medical, therapeutic, daily care, has been to ensure she is safe, healthy, and supported emotionally." The judge nodded again. "Very well, we will proceed carefully, ensuring she is comfortable with any conversation or appearance on the phone. The court's primary concern is her well-being." Ben exhaled quietly, relief mixing with tension. "Thank you, Your Honor." Joe placed a reassuring hand on Ben's shoulder. "We'll get through this together." The room remained calm, the focus entirely on Victoria's protection and the legal process moving responsibly forward. Billy's voice rang out sharply from the back of the courtroom. "You monsters, he couldn't even consent for that." The judge raised a hand, calm but firm. "Mr. Smith, we will get to your concerns in due course. Please remain seated and allow the court to proceed." Ben and Joe exchanged a tense glance, both holding their breath as the judge continued. "The court will now call Victoria on the phone," the judge said. "We will mirror the call to the courtroom TV so all parties can see and hear her. This is for transparency and to ensure her voice is heard." Ben's hands tightened around his folders. "She's ready, Your Honor. Jake has been keeping her calm, everything's on routine, and she understands in age-appropriate terms." Joe nodded. "Yes, she's prepared emotionally. She knows this is to make sure she's safe and she'll be supported throughout." The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the video connection was set up. Victoria appeared on the screen, sitting comfortably with her plush toy beside her. Her small hands fidgeted slightly, but she looked calm. "Hello, Victoria," the judge said gently, smiling to put her at ease. "Can you hear me?" Victoria's voice was soft but clear. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good," the judge said. "I just want to ask a few questions to make sure you are safe and happy and that the people taking care of you are doing what's best for you. If you ever feel uncomfortable, you can let me know and we'll stop immediately. Do you understand?" "Yes," Victoria replied. Her hands clutched the plush toy a little tighter, but her eyes met the camera steadily. The courtroom fell silent, all attention on the small figure on the screen, Victoria, while the judge prepared to ask questions focused entirely on her safety, comfort, and well-being. The judge leaned forward slightly, keeping her tone gentle. Victoria, how old are you now? Your real age, not pretending. Victoria didn't hesitate. 43, she said plainly. The courtroom stirred, but the judge raised a hand for quiet and nodded. Thank you, the judge said. And what name do you want to be called, Vin or Victoria? Victoria hugged her plush closer. Sam Vin life not happy, she said slowly, choosing her words. Victoria life happy. The judge's expression softened. All right, thank you for telling me that. She glanced down at her notes, then back up at the screen. One last question, Victoria. Billy, Joe, and Ben are here. Who is your dad? Victoria thought for a moment. All but no Vin life, she said carefully, then she looked straight into the camera. Then Daddy Ben and Daddy Joe. The judge nodded, clearly moved but composed. Thank you, Victoria, you did very well. Victoria smiled a little. Bye, she said, and waved before the call ended. The screen went dark, the courtroom was silent. The judge sat back and folded her hands. The court has heard from Victoria directly. Her statements, combined with the medical records, guardianship documents, and testimony, will weigh heavily in this decision. Billy shifted angrily, but the judge's gaze stopped him cold. This court's priority, the judge continued, is safety, stability, and well-being. I will issue my ruling shortly. Ben let out a shaky breath. Joe squeezed his hand once, steady and grounding. Whatever came next, Victoria had been heard, clearly, calmly, and on her own terms. Billy stood abruptly. Your Honor, Mr. Ben made my 4 sons scared for their lives in the past, and now he has one of my sons playing dress-up. This is Stockholm Syndrome. The courtroom murmured. The judge raised her hand immediately. Mr. Smith, you will not use inflammatory language in this courtroom. You may state concerns, not accusations. John stood next, voice tense but controlled. Your Honor, Victoria told me she was afraid of Ben and his husband. I recognized that look. I was her caregiver before. I've seen that face. That's how I know she's scared right now. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp but calm. Mr. Smith, she said to John, you are asserting an interpretation, not a diagnosis. Do you have contemporaneous reports, mandated reporter filings, medical or therapeutic documentation? John hesitated. No, Your Honor, but feelings and impressions, the judge interrupted gently, are not evidence by themselves. She turned to Billy. Mr. Smith, the record shows you relinquished custody when Victoria was placed in a group home. You did not seek reunification, visitation, or emergency review until this hearing. Is that correct? Billy clenched his jaw. Yes. The judge nodded. The court also heard directly from Victoria. Her statements were consistent, voluntary, and calm. They align with medical and therapeutic records presented today. She looked back at Ben and Joe. However, she added, because allegations of fear have been raised, this court will proceed carefully. The judge addressed the room. I am ordering the following. Temporary guardianship remains with Ben, pending final review. An independent court-appointed evaluator will meet with Victoria, without Ben, Joe, or the biological family present. No unsupervised contact by any party until the evaluation is complete. All parties are to refrain from public statements, harassment, or interference. She paused, then spoke firmly. This court does not decide based on anger, ideology, or assumptions. We decide based on safety, stability, and evidence. Ben swallowed hard but nodded. Joe's hand remained steady on his back. The judge concluded Victoria will not be moved today. She will remain where she is stable. This court will reconvene once the evaluation is complete. The gavel struck once. Court is adjourned. Victoria looked up at Jake, her hands trembling slightly. Jake, I did okay, right? Jake immediately knelt to her level, keeping his voice calm. You did okay, Victoria, you're safe right now. She swallowed hard. I need to go back home. Jake didn't rush her. Home where you are now, he said gently. You're at home. Victoria shook her head, panic rising. No, Georgia, I miss my family. Help me, Jake, her voice cracked. Jake's expression changed, not angry, not dismissive, but serious and attentive. He sat back slightly to give her space. Victoria, he said slowly, I hear that you're upset. I'm here with you. I'm not going anywhere. She hugged herself tighter. They hurt me, she said through tears. Jake took a steady breath. This was no longer babysitting, this was care and protection. Okay, he said softly, thank you for telling me you didn't do anything wrong. He did not question her, not argue, not correct her words. Instead, he followed protocol. I'm going to stay right here with you, Jake continued. And I'm going to call Ben and Joe and the people whose job it is to help. You are not in trouble, you are not alone. Victoria looked at him scared. Promise. I promise, Jake said firmly. Right now we slow down, you breathe with me. He waited until her breathing steadied, then quietly stepped aside and made the call, documenting exactly what was said word for word, just like he'd been trained. Back in the room, Jake returned and sat where she could see him. You did okay, he repeated. The adults are handling this, you're safe right now. Victoria leaned back against her pillows, exhausted but no longer alone. Jake stepped into a quiet room and made the call. Your Honor, Victoria is very upset. She keeps saying she wants to go home to Georgia. The judge's voice was calm and measured. Thank you for calling, Jake. Is she crying? Yes, Jake answered honestly. She's distressed. All right, the judge said. Please put her on the line and Jake stay with her. Jake nodded and gently angled the phone toward Victoria. She's here, Your Honor. Victoria's voice trembled. I'm sorry, I just want to go home. The judge spoke slowly, kindly. Victoria, thank you for telling me how you feel. You are not in trouble. When people are upset like this, it means we need to slow things down and make sure everyone is safe. Victoria sniffed. I miss my family. I understand, the judge said. Here is what's going to happen next. You are going to stay where you are for tonight with people whose job is to keep you safe. Tomorrow, a neutral professional, someone who does not work for anyone in this case, will talk with you privately. You can tell them everything you're feeling. Victoria was quiet for a moment. You will get help, the judge continued, and we will make decisions only after listening carefully. No one is allowed to pressure you, do you understand? Yes, Victoria whispered. Good, the judge said gently. Jake will stay with you. If you feel overwhelmed, you can ask for a break. You did the right thing by speaking up. The call ended. Jake set the phone down and sat nearby, not touching, not crowding. You're okay, he said softly. We're just going to breathe for a minute. Outside the room, the legal process was already shifting, not toward blame or panic, but toward independent evaluation, protection, and clarity. Victoria was heard. And now the system had to respond carefully. Tell me which path you want next and I'll continue responsibly. The room was quiet and neutral. No Ben, no Joe, just the court-appointed evaluator seated across from Victoria, who sat in her power chair with her hands folded tightly in her lap. The evaluator spoke calmly. Before we begin, I want you to know a few things. I don't work for Ben, Joe, or your biological family. My job is to listen and make sure you're safe. You can stop at any time. Do you understand? Victoria nodded. She took a breath. Before we begin, my name is Vin. I am a boy, and Ben and Joe had part of my body removed. The evaluator did not react with shock, did not correct, and did not affirm or deny the statement. Thank you for telling me that, the evaluator said evenly. I hear that you're saying two important things: how you see yourself and that you believe something happened to your body that hurt you. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Yes. The evaluator nodded. Right now, I'm not deciding what is true or false. My job is to understand what you believe happened and how it makes you feel. We'll take this slowly. They paused, allowing Victoria to breathe. Can you tell me, the evaluator continued gently, when you first remember feeling scared or hurt about this? Victoria hesitated, then spoke softly. After the bad helper, I was already scared then. The evaluator noted this carefully. Okay, and when you think about Ben and Joe, do you feel scared right now or safe right now? Victoria looked down, confused. That's okay, the evaluator said. Confused is an honest answer. The evaluator made a note, then explained clearly and calmly. Because you said you feel hurt and afraid, I am required to share this with the court so they can make sure you are protected. That does not mean you're in trouble. It means adults will slow everything down. Victoria looked up. Will I be punished? No, the evaluator said firmly. You did the right thing by talking. Jake knelt slightly so he was at eye level. "You're ready to go home," he said gently. Vin shook his head, gripping the arm of his power chair. "No, can you please take me to the courthouse? I need to talk to the judge face to face." Jake did not agree or refuse right away. He took a slow breath. "Okay," he said calmly. "I hear that this is important to you. I can't decide that by myself, but I can help you ask the right way." Vin looked up. "Please." Jake stepped a few feet away and made the call, documenting the request exactly as spoken. "Your Honor," Jake said when connected, "Vin is asking to speak with you in person. He's calm, not panicking, and says he wants to explain things face to face." There was a brief pause. The judge responded clearly and firmly. "Thank you for telling me. Vin does not need to go anywhere alone. If he wishes to speak in person, it will be scheduled, supervised, and with the court-appointed evaluator present. No guardians, no biological family in the room." Jake returned to Vin. "The judge says yes, but safely, not right this second. It will be arranged so you're protected and not pressured." Vin's shoulders relaxed a little. "So I can talk?" "Yes," Jake said, "you can talk, and people will listen." Vin nodded. "Okay." "For now," Jake continued, "we go back to where you're staying, rest, eat, and stay on routine. Talking works best when you're not exhausted." Vin looked down, then back up. "You promise I won't be ignored?" Yeah. Jake answered without hesitation. "I promise you were heard and you're still being heard." He positioned the power chair comfortably and checked that everything was secure. "Let's go, one step at a time." As they left, the process moved forward, not fast, not chaotic, but carefully, exactly how it needs to when someone vulnerable asks to be heard. If you want to continue, the strongest next options are Vin's in-person meeting with the judge, with evaluator present. The judge issuing emergency protective orders. Medical records being clarified against Vin's beliefs. Jake testifying about Vin's emotional state. Vin beginning trauma-informed therapy. "Tell me which path you want next." The meeting room at the courthouse was small and quiet. Vin sat in his power chair facing the judge. The court-appointed evaluator sat slightly to the side, neutral and observant. No Ben, no Joe, no Billy. The judge spoke first, calm and steady. "Thank you for coming in, Vin. You asked to speak face to face. Take your time." Vin swallowed, then spoke clearly. "After this case, I want to know if I have any power to sue the couple that did this to me. And when I get to see Billy, my real dad, and my brothers by my side as I sue that couple for pain and suffering." The judge did not react emotionally. She nodded once. "Thank you for saying that out loud," she said. "I'm going to answer you carefully and honestly." She leaned forward slightly. "First, you do not need to decide anything about lawsuits right now. You are allowed to ask questions, but no court will expect or allow you to take legal action while questions about guardianship, capacity, and medical facts are still being reviewed." Vin frowned. "So I can't?" The judge held up a hand gently. "I didn't say can't, I said not yet." She continued, clear and structured. "Whether someone can sue depends on several things. What actually happened medically? Who legally authorized it? Your legal capacity at the time. And verified medical records, not just memory or belief. Those facts are not decided today." Vin looked down, frustrated but listening. "Second," the judge said, "about seeing Billy and your brothers." The evaluator made a small note. "At this moment," the judge continued, "contact with any family, biological or guardians is paused until the evaluation is complete. That is not a punishment. It is to make sure no one pressures you, intentionally or unintentionally." Vin's voice shook. "I just want them to hear me." "I understand," the judge said evenly. "And they may hear you later through safe, supervised channels if the professionals recommend it." She paused, then said something very important. "Right now, your only job is to be honest, to rest, and to work with the evaluator and doctors. My job is to make sure no one rushes you into decisions, especially legal ones." Vin was quiet. The judge softened her tone slightly. "You did the right thing by asking. Asking does not mean you must act, and no one gets to use you as a weapon against anyone else." Vin looked up. "So I still have a voice?" "Yes," the judge said firmly. "You absolutely do, but this court will protect that voice by slowing things down." She glanced at the evaluator. We'll continue with assessment and record review. Once facts are clear, Vin will be informed plainly of what options exist and which do not. The judge looked back to Vin. You are not trapped and you are not alone, but today is about safety, not blame. Vin nodded slowly. Okay. That's enough for today, the judge said. Thank you for being brave. As Vin was escorted out, the process continued, not toward confrontation but toward clarity. The courtroom came back into session. The judge nodded to Vin's attorney. You may proceed. Vin's lawyer stood. The defense calls Dr. Tai Win. Dr. Win took the stand, was sworn in and sat upright. Vin's lawyer spoke calmly. Dr. Win, did you perform a surgical procedure on my client? Yes, Dr. Win replied. I performed a medically documented procedure. Why did you perform that surgery? The lawyer asked. Dr. Win folded his hands. According to the information provided to me at the time, Ben and Joe described ongoing medical and hygiene concerns. They communicated this to me directly. The lawyer paused. You stated previously that those conversations were conducted in Japanese. Is that correct? Yes, Dr. Win said. The lawyer took a step closer. Doctor, were you aware that my client does not understand Japanese? Dr. Win hesitated. At the time, I understood that the patient had limited communication capacity and that the guardians were authorized decision makers. The lawyer pressed gently. But did you personally verify my client's understanding, assent, or objection in a language they understand before proceeding? Dr. Win took a breath. I relied on guardian consent and medical documentation. I did not conduct a full language comprehension confirmation directly with the patient. A murmur moved through the courtroom. The judge raised a hand. Order. Vin's lawyer nodded. Thank you, doctor. No further questions at this time. The judge made a note, her expression unreadable. She then spoke clearly to the room. The court will weigh this testimony carefully. Guardian consent, patient capacity, language access, and medical necessity are all factors that must be evaluated together. No conclusions will be drawn until all evidence is heard. Vin sat quietly beside his attorney, hands gripping the armrests of his chair, not triumphant, not defeated, but finally listened to. The evaluator wrote steadily. And for the first time since the case began, the focus was no longer on accusations, but on process, safeguards, and what should have happened. Ben and Joe's lawyer stood. Doctor, you testified earlier that Vin's statements and presentation have been inconsistent. Is that correct? Yes, Dr. Win answered. There have been inconsistencies over time. The lawyer continued, measured. According to my clients, Vin repeatedly engaged in behaviors that resulted in frequent soiling and removal of protective garments, despite redirection and behavioral supports. Doctor, were those issues described to you as hygiene and health concerns? Yes, Dr. Win said, they were presented as hygiene-related management problems. The lawyer paused. In your medical opinion, are those behaviors by themselves a hygienic justification for the surgical procedure performed? Dr. Win answered plainly, no, those behaviors alone are not by themselves sufficient hygienic justification. A quiet stir moved through the courtroom. The lawyer nodded once. Thank you. Final question, doctor. What was your intention in performing this surgery? Dr. Win took a breath. The stated intention was to improve Vin's overall quality of life by reducing care-related complications as described by the caretakers. The lawyer sat, no further questions. The judge leaned forward, steepling her hands. Let the record reflect, she said evenly, that the court has now heard testimony that hygiene concerns were cited. Those concerns alone do not medically justify the procedure. Guardian reports were relied upon. And direct patient comprehension and assent were not verified in a language the patient understands. She looked directly at Dr. Win. This court will consider standards of informed consent, medical necessity, and duty of care. No conclusions are reached today. Her gaze moved to Vin. Mr. Smith, you are not required to respond to this testimony now. Then to counsel, the court will take a recess. Upon return, we will hear expert testimony on capacity, consent, and appropriate alternatives that should have been considered. The gavel struck once. Vin sat quietly, the evaluator beside him, grounding and present. For the first time, the questions being asked were the right ones, not about blame but about process, protection, and responsibility. Vin was sworn in and seated at the witness stand. The courtroom was silent. His lawyer spoke gently. "Vin, I'm going to ask you a difficult question. If you need a moment, say so." Vin nodded. "Can you tell the court why you touched that part of your body before the surgery?" Vin took a breath. "Everyone else can reach and take care of that area when it itches or feels uncomfortable. I couldn't. When it wasn't clean, it bothered me a lot and I couldn't fix it myself." The lawyer paused to let that settle. "So, Vin," the lawyer continued, "when you did that, was it for comfort and relief, not for anything sexual?" "Yes," Vin said clearly, "comfort. I just wanted it to stop bothering me." The lawyer nodded. "Thank you. And were you trying to make things harder for your caregivers?" "No," Vin said softly. "I just didn't know what else to do." The lawyer looked at the judge. "Thank you, Your Honor." Then back to Vin. "Vin, I know that was hard to talk about in public. You did well." Vin swallowed and nodded, gripping the arms of his chair. The judge addressed the courtroom. "Let the record reflect that the witness described the behavior as comfort-seeking related to hygiene and sensation, not sexual intent." She looked at counsel on both sides. "The court will weigh this testimony alongside medical standards, consent requirements, and whether appropriate alternatives were explored." She turned to Vin directly. "You may step down." As Vin was escorted back to his seat, the evaluator met his eyes and gave a small, grounding nod, acknowledging the courage it took to speak. The case moved forward, no longer clouded by assumptions but anchored in clarity, dignity, and facts. The lawyer's question hung in the air. "Do you still feel itching in that area after the surgery, such as your inner thigh or nearby areas?" Vin blinked. Before he could answer, the lawyer approached the bench and handed the judge a document. "Your Honor," the lawyer said, "this is a message from the former caretaker, Liam Smith, to my client Ben. Quote, Sam needs a cage on to keep him safe from his own mess. John, Allen, and myself found that he is more relaxed with it than without." Vin's lawyer was on his feet immediately. "Objection, my client is visibly distressed. This line of questioning is causing harm." The judge raised her hand. "Hold." Vin's breathing became uneven, his hands tightened, his eyes darted. Ben shouted from counsel table, "He's going into a seizure." "Order," the judge said sharply. She stood. "All questioning stops now." Court security moved instantly. The evaluator and medical staff were already approaching Vin. "Clear the well," the judge ordered. "No one speaks to the witness." Vin's lawyer stayed close but did not touch him. The evaluator spoke calmly. "Vin, you're safe. You don't have to answer anything. Focus on breathing." Medical protocol was followed quietly, efficiently, no theatrics. The judge turned back to the courtroom, her voice firm and controlled. "Let the record reflect that the witness exhibited acute distress during questioning. This court will not allow testimony to continue under these conditions." She looked directly at Ben and Joe's counsel. "The document you attempted to introduce raises serious concerns about past restraints and language used to describe this individual. That issue will be addressed outside the presence of the witness." She struck the gavel once. "This court is in recess. When we return, the witness will not be recalled today. Medical clearance will be required before any further testimony. Counsel will address admissibility and relevance of caretaker communications. The court will evaluate whether continued adversarial questioning is appropriate at all." As Vin was carefully escorted out with medical staff and the evaluator, the courtroom remained silent. The judge's final words before recess were unmistakable. "This court's priority is safety, not spectacle. Anyone who forgets that will answer to me." The courtroom reconvened quietly. Vin was no longer present. The court-appointed evaluator stood and addressed the judge. "Your Honor," the evaluator said, voice steady but serious, "I need to be honest with the court." The judge nodded. "Go ahead." "What I observed today, both in the courtroom and during the medical response, has created a conflict with my role," the evaluator continued. "Based on what I saw outside the courtroom, I believe I can no longer remain neutral in this case. For that reason, I am requesting to withdraw." A murmur moved through the room. The evaluator went on, choosing words carefully. I want to be clear, I am not making a legal conclusion. I am reporting observations. During Vin's distress, the only individuals who appeared able to calm and ground him were seated at the other table. Members of his biological family were present in the courtroom but did not engage or assist. Vin's attorney stood. Your Honor, we object to any implication of fitness or unfitness being made through evaluator testimony without a formal report. The judge raised a hand, sustained in part. She looked directly at the evaluator. Your request to withdraw is noted, however, I need to clarify something for the record. The judge spoke slowly and clearly so there was no misunderstanding. This court does not determine guardianship, safety, or credibility based on reactions during a medical episode in court. Stress responses are complex. No conclusions will be drawn today. She turned back to the evaluator. You may submit a written motion to withdraw limited strictly to professional conflict, not recommendations. The court will appoint a new independent evaluator. Then addressing everyone. Let the record reflect. Testimony today was interrupted due to medical distress. No findings of fact have been made. No party has been deemed fit or unfit. Further proceedings will occur only after stabilization and independent review. She fixed her gaze on both tables. This case will proceed without emotional leverage from any side. The gavel struck once. We are adjourned for today. As the courtroom cleared, the process reset not toward a verdict but toward structure, safeguards, and separation of emotion from evidence. Inside the judge's chambers, the atmosphere was controlled and professional. The newly appointed evaluator sat across from the judge with a folder closed in front of them. The evaluator spoke carefully. Seeing that the prior evaluator withdrew, I want to be transparent. From initial observation, Vin appears fearful, particularly when discussing Ben. The judge nodded once. For clarity, he has asked to be called Vin. In my courtroom, that is the name we use. Understood, the evaluator said. However, I need to be honest, even if this is uncomfortable. The judge raised her hand slightly. Be precise. The evaluator corrected course immediately. I am not making a recommendation today, I am stating only this. Based on Vin's history, his distress responses, and the available records so far, the situation is more complex than fear alone. The judge leaned back. Explain. What looks like fear may also include trauma conditioning, dependency, and conflicting attachments, the evaluator said. That does not automatically mean any party is safe or unsafe. It means conclusions cannot be rushed. The judge's voice was firm. Let me be very clear, no evaluator will declare a placement appropriate or inappropriate without completed medical record review, consent analysis, trauma assessment, and capacity evaluation. Yes, Your Honor, the evaluator said immediately. The judge continued. This court does not reward control, distress compliance, or courtroom behavior. We protect Vin by slowing this down. The evaluator nodded. My role will be limited to assessment only, no recommendations until the evaluation is complete. Good, the judge said, that is the only acceptable answer. She closed the file in front of her. For now, the judge concluded, Vin remains neutralized from all parties, no testimony, no contact leverage, no conclusions. The court will reconvene only when facts, not reactions, are ready. The meeting ended without drama, without declarations, and without shortcuts. That is how the court protects someone like Vin. The room was quiet, no courtroom, no lawyers, just Vin in his power chair and the new evaluator seated a few feet away at eye level. Vin's voice was tight. Please, I don't want to live with Ben and Joe. The evaluator did not challenge him. I hear that, he said calmly. I'm not here to force you into any decision today. He waited a moment, then continued gently. I want to understand why you feel that way, not to argue with you, but to make sure the court understands what's going on inside you. Vin nodded, breathing unevenly. The evaluator asked, do you remember who realized you were having a seizure in the courtroom? Vin frowned, no. That's okay, the evaluator said. You're not expected to remember medical events during distress. He spoke carefully next. The record shows that Ben and Joe were the ones who noticed and stayed close. Billy and John left the area. Vin's hands clenched. That doesn't mean I can go back, he said quickly. I can't. The evaluator nodded slowly. I understand, and I'm not saying that it does. Vin looked up surprised. What I am saying, the evaluator continued, is that your reactions are telling me something important. You are not just afraid of people, you are afraid of losing control again. Vin's eyes filled, he didn't answer. That fear can exist even when someone has helped you before, the evaluator said. Especially if you've experienced harm, restraint, or decisions being made without your understanding. Vin whispered, I don't want anyone deciding my body again. The evaluator wrote that down word for word. Thank you for telling me that, he said, that matters. He leaned back slightly, making space. Hear what I need you to know, Vin. I am not deciding today where you live. I am not saying Ben and Joe are safe or unsafe. I am not saying your biological family is safe or unsafe. My job is to tell the judge this truth. You are experiencing fear, loss of agency, and trauma, and those feelings must be respected before any placement decision is made. Vin's shoulders dropped a little. So I don't have to go back right now. No, the evaluator said clearly, no immediate move will happen because of this meeting. Vin exhaled shakily. The evaluator continued, what will happen is, you will remain in a neutral, protected placement. No one will have unsupervised access. And the court will not allow medical or life decisions without multiple safeguards. Vin nodded slowly, okay. The evaluator closed his notebook. You did something important today. You spoke honestly without yelling, without shutting down. That helps protect you. Vin was quiet but calmer. We'll meet again, the evaluator said, and next time we'll talk about what safe looks like to you, not who wins. The courtroom was quiet as the new evaluator finished speaking. Based on Vin's history, length of relationships, and medical complexity, it is my professional opinion that Ben and Joe are best positioned to meet his needs. Vin has significant disabilities including autism, SMA type 3, and body dysphoria. Ben has extensive hospital experience, and Vin has had consistent structure in that household. I believe Vin has achieved stability there that he has not had elsewhere. The judge did not nod. She raised her hand. Evaluator stopped there. The room froze. I am going to clarify the record, the judge said firmly, because your testimony as stated goes too far. She leaned forward. First, you may testify about facts, length of relationships, medical complexity, observed stability. She continued. Second, you may testify about clinical observations, patterns of attachment, regulation, and care consistency. Then very clearly, you may not declare a placement best or imply a final custody outcome. That decision belongs to this court, not to an evaluator. The evaluator immediately responded, understood, Your Honor. I withdraw the word best and clarify that I am reporting observed capacity and consistency, not making a custody determination. The judge nodded once. She then addressed the courtroom. Let the record reflect the following, clearly and without interpretation. Vin met his biological family approximately 1.5 years ago. He has known Ben for approximately 6 years. Vin has multiple diagnosed disabilities requiring skilled care. Ben has relevant medical experience. The evaluator observed greater routine familiarity in Ben and Joe's household. This court does not equate familiarity with safety, nor medical skill with consent authority. She turned directly to Vin's attorney. Vin's stated fear and refusal remain legally relevant and unresolved. Then to Ben and Joe's counsel. Stability alone does not override autonomy, consent standards, or trauma response. The judge paused, letting that settle. This case is not about who knows Vin longer. It is about whether decisions were lawful, whether consent was valid, whether Vin's rights were respected, and whether future care can occur without coercion. She struck the gavel once. The court will take this testimony under advisement. No placement change will occur today. A written order will follow. Vin sat quietly, the evaluator no longer speaking about him, but the court speaking for his protection. The judge looked directly at Billy Smith. Mr. Smith, answer my questions clearly. Billy straightened. Yes, Your Honor. How many children do you have? 4 in total. And how many bedrooms are in your home? 5. One of my sons gave up his room for Vin because it's on the first floor. The judge nodded slightly. Who would be responsible for Vin's daily care? Billy answered, me, my son John, Vin's brother, he's 20, and Vin's mother, Sam. The judge paused, then asked the next question carefully. Who trained you in Vin's medical and daily care? Was it Vin himself or was it Ben? Billy hesitated. Ben did, Your Honor. The courtroom was silent. The judge made a note, then looked up. So to be clear, she said evenly, Ben, one of the parties before this court, provided the training you would rely on to care for Vin. Yes, Billy said, he showed us how things were done. The judge leaned forward slightly. Mr. Smith, this is not a criticism, this is clarification. She continued. This court must consider continuity of medical knowledge, demonstrated caregiving capacity, and whether any proposed placement can safely meet Vin's complex needs without reliance on a party whose authority is under review. She turned briefly to counsel. That point matters. Then back to Billy. One more question, the judge said. Before the past year and a half, when was the last time Vin lived in your household? Billy answered quietly, years ago. The judge nodded and closed her notebook. Thank you, you may step back. She addressed the courtroom as a whole. Let the record reflect. Mr. Smith has housing space available. Family members are willing to assist. But caregiving training has been limited and recently provided by Ben. And Vin's care needs are substantial and ongoing. She looked toward Vin's table. This court will not make a placement decision based on good intentions alone. The gavel tapped once. We will proceed next with evidence of caregiving readiness, not promises. John stood, hands shaking slightly. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge looked at him carefully. You may. Please state your name and role for the record. John Smith, he said. I'm Vin's younger brother. I've helped care for him. Go ahead, the judge said. Stick to facts you personally know. John nodded. Your Honor, Ben never notified us about Vin's bottom surgery. None of us were told, we were never asked, we were never consulted. He swallowed. I feel like Ben did that to keep us out of Vin's life for good, that's my belief. The judge raised her hand immediately. Mr. Smith, pause. The room went silent. I am allowing the first part of your statement, the judge said firmly. You testified that you were not notified. You were not consulted. And you were unaware of the surgery at the time. She then looked directly at John. I am not accepting speculation about intent. Belief and guess are not evidence. Yes, Your Honor, John said quickly. The judge continued, measured but clear. Let the record reflect. Biological family members state they were not informed of the procedure. Whether they were legally required to be informed is a legal question, not an emotional one. Intent will be determined, if at all, through documents, consent forms, and testimony, not inference. She turned toward Ben and Joe's counsel. Counsel, notification practices, and consent authority are now squarely at issue. Then to Vin's attorney. Counsel, this testimony supports inquiry into exclusion, not conclusion of motive. The judge looked back at John. One final question, she said. Before this surgery, did you have legal authority over Vin's medical decisions? John hesitated. No, Your Honor. Thank you, the judge said. You may step down. She addressed the courtroom. This court will not decide this case on suspicion or fear. It will decide it on who had authority, how that authority was exercised, whether safeguards were followed, and whether Vin's rights were protected. The gavel tapped once. We will proceed with documentary evidence of consent and notification. Ben's attorney stood. Your Honor, we have a voice recording we would like to introduce into evidence. The judge looked up. Describe it. It is a recording of Vin at the time identifying as Victoria, stating that he felt happier and freer presenting as a girl. The judge nodded once. Play it. The audio filled the courtroom. Daddy Ben, I don't know why, but I feel happier as a girl. I feel so happy and free. The recording ended. Before anyone could speak, Vin leaned toward his lawyer and whispered urgently, his lawyer immediately stood. "Your Honor," Vin's attorney said, "my client needs the court to hear something now." The judge raised her hand to Ben's counsel. "Hold." She turned to Vin's lawyer. "Proceed." "My client states that at the time of that recording he believed he had no freedom of movement or access to activities unless he complied with expectations set by Ben and Joe, including how he dressed and presented." The courtroom went silent. The judge did not react emotionally. She leaned forward. "Vin," she said calmly, "I am going to ask you one yes or no question. Answer only if you are able." Vin nodded, tense. "At the time that recording was made," the judge asked, "did you believe that refusing to dress or present the way Ben and Joe wanted would limit your ability to leave the house or participate in daily life?" Vin answered quietly but clearly. "Yes." The judge nodded once. She did not look at Ben. "Let the record reflect," she said evenly, "that the witness has alleged conditional freedom and coercion at the time the recording was made." She turned to counsel. "This recording is not excluded, but it is significantly limited in evidentiary weight." Ben's attorney began to speak. The judge stopped him. "A statement of happiness is not proof of consent if it was made under perceived loss of autonomy. This court will not treat recordings obtained in a power-imbalanced caregiving relationship as determinative without corroboration." She looked directly at both tables. "This evidence raises serious questions, not answers." Then firmly, "The court will require context of when and how the recording was made, whether Vin had meaningful choice at that time, and expert testimony on coercion and compliance behavior in disabled adults." She struck the gavel lightly. "No conclusions will be drawn from this recording today." Vin sat back, shaking slightly, but no longer unheard. The judge's final words were clear. "This court does not punish honesty, and it does not reward control disguised as care. After reviewing the evidence," she said, "it appears that John and Billy Smith misused Vin's Social Security benefits while he was abroad. That is a serious violation of federal law. Law enforcement will take them into custody immediately. Bail and further proceedings will be handled according to federal guidelines." John and Billy were visibly shocked. Court officers stepped forward. The judge continued. "Regarding Vin's care and living situation, this court cannot ignore his expressed fear and past trauma. The guardian arrangement will be decided based on the evaluator's professional report, medical records, and documented safety measures, not simply prior placement or family preference." Vin leaned forward in his power chair, hands gripping the armrests. "Your Honor," Vin said softly, "I don't want to go back with Ben and Joe." The judge nodded. "I hear you, Vin. This court respects your fear and autonomy. No final placement will occur until a trauma-informed, independent evaluation is completed. Medical consent and safety are clarified, and you are supported by professionals during transition." She turned to Ben and Joe. "You may continue to provide care under supervision, but no irreversible procedures, no coercion, and full transparency with the court is required." She looked at Vin again. "You have the right to request changes if you feel unsafe. The court will honor that right." The gavel struck lightly. "This session is adjourned. Enforcement of SSI violations and protective orders will follow immediately." Vin exhaled, the evaluator quietly at his side. For the first time, the court had acknowledged his fear, rights, and the legal violations of others without making assumptions about what happens next. 1 year later, the final court oversight visit had concluded. The evaluator and court officer had left the home and everything was calm. Ben closed the front door and turned to Victoria, now settled in her room. "Last visit," he said softly. When she looked up, Ben added gently, "Bedtime, Victoria." Joe stepped in. "No more court visits, that chapter is over." Ben nodded. "Yes, you've earned this calm, no more interruptions." Victoria shifted in her chair. "I thought you were going to keep calling me Vin." Ben gave a small, reassuring smile. "That was just for the record back then. From now on, you rest. Bedtime. No one needs to touch your hair again. It took a year, but we've restored your routine." Joe added quietly, "Back like before." Victoria exhaled and nodded. The room was peaceful. Ben and Joe made sure her pillows were arranged comfortably, her power chair positioned for support, and her night feed ready if she wanted it. "Good night," Ben said. Victoria whispered good night. For the first time in years, the environment felt safe, consistent, and under her control. The court had finished its oversight. The trauma-informed structures were in place and Victoria's voice had been acknowledged, leaving her with a stable home and predictable routine. Life slowly settled back into its old day-to-day routines. The past 2 years, court proceedings, evaluations, and disruptions felt almost like a distant memory. Victoria's room was arranged just as it had been before, her dresses hung neatly, makeup organized, and daily schedules back in place. Victoria sat in her chair, smoothing her dress. "When Jake coming back?" she asked. Ben shook his head gently. "He's not coming back. He was let go after the outburst that caused trouble with the courts. Me and Joe are being extra careful now just to make sure nothing like that happens again." Victoria frowned. "I thought you guys were changing. I want shoes, short hair, and boy clothes." Ben's voice was calm but firm. "Victoria, you will keep your long hair and your dresses, that's final." She looked away, slightly frustrated, but the routine continued as before. Meals at set times, therapy and exercises incorporated into her day, medications and medical care administered consistently, and quiet evenings in her room. Even as she adjusted to a world that felt safe again, the boundaries were clear. Ben and Joe had learned from the court oversight that predictability, consistency, and respecting routines mattered most. Victoria went through her day like she had before, all the court stuff, comfortable in her dresses, her makeup, and the familiar rhythm of home. There was no chaos, no surprises, just stability she hadn't known for years. Ben leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Joe, her biological family can't reach us again. I've filed a restraining order against the Smith family and the court has granted us full custody over Victoria." Joe blinked. "We have 100% over Victoria." Ben nodded firmly. "Yes, and I've made it clear to our local police that she has a younger mindset and is still confused about what's real and what's make-believe. That way, everyone knows she needs special care and protection." Joe exhaled and smiled faintly. "Great." Ben looked over at Victoria's room, neat and calm as always. "She's safe, her routine is intact, her life can finally be about her, not the court or fear." Joe nodded. "Finally." Ben added quietly, almost to himself, "Let's keep it that way." And with that, the long years of upheaval, fear, and uncertainty finally came to an end. Victoria's world was stable, her daily life predictable, and her voice, finally, respected. The end.